My husband mocked me at his promotion party, calling me a trophy from his poor phase. The room erupted in laughter. They didn't know that his cruel words had just sparked a fire within me. A quiet, furious resolve that would, in time, orchestrate his complete downfall. This is the story of how I turned profound humiliation into unparalleled empowerment, transforming a scorned wife into a strategic mastermind. For years, I had built my world around Leonard. Every choice, every sacrifice, every quiet ambition had been carefully folded away to support his meteoric rise. This evening, his promotion party, was meant to be the culmination of our shared efforts. A celebration of Time's success. I had spent days meticulously preparing our home, buffing the antique hardwood floors until they gleamed like liquid amber, arranging the crystal stemware, and ensuring the perfect Colombian blend coffee was ready to brew for the morning. I'd always been the quiet strength behind him, the meticulous planner, the one who saw the subtle details he often overlooked, a quality he once admired but now seemed to take for granted. Our early years, filled with shared dreams and modest means, felt like a distant memory, replaced by a subtle creeping indifference from his side. Marcus Webb, his chief rival turned subordinate at Sterling Financial, was expected to attend, making Leonard's triumphant night even sweeter. It was while I was adding the final touches to the floral arrangement, a delicate spray of white lilies, that I overheard him, Leonard, in his study, on the phone. "Marcus, old boy, you know how it is," he chuckled, a low, confident sound that sent a chill down my spine. "Cheryl? Oh, she's a relic. A trophy from my poor phase. Good for polishing the image, you know, but everyone needs an upgrade eventually." The words hung in the air, cold and sharp, shattering the warmth I had woven into every corner of our home. My hands trembled, the pristine white ceramic coffee mug I was holding slipping from my grasp. It hit the newly polished floor with a sickening crunch, splintering into irreparable fragments, just like the illusion of our perfect life. The ceramic shards lay scattered, sharp edges reflecting the overhead light, mocking the flawless polish beneath. My hands, still trembling, slowly lowered from where the mug had been. The sound of Leonard's laughter, the dismissive tone in his voice, replayed in my mind like a broken record, each word a fresh wound. A relic. A trophy from his poor phase. Everyone needs an upgrade eventually. The truth, stark and brutal, had just fractured my entire existence. Yet, the party loomed. A monstrous, inevitable beast. How could I face him? How could I face times them knowing what lay beneath the polished veneer of our life? Dread coiled in my stomach. A cold, hard knot. The navy dress, carefully chosen just hours before, now felt like a shroud. It was elegant, understated, meant to convey sophisticated support, his time's support. Now, it felt like a uniform for my public execution. I smoothed it down, the silk cool against my skin, a stark contrast to the burning shame that had ignited within me. Leonard emerged from his study, smelling of his expensive cologne, oblivious to the fragments of my heart that still littered the kitchen floor. He merely glanced at the broken mug, a flicker of annoyance, then said, "Cheryl, darling, Marcus and the others will be here any minute. We can't have guests stepping on glass. Get that cleaned up, please." He didn't wait for a response, already moving towards the living room, ready to bask in the glow of his achievement. That casual dismissal, that expectation, cemented a resolve colder than any dread. I would clean the mess. Yes, but not just the one on the floor. The room filled quickly, a chorus of congratulations and boisterous laughter. I moved through it like a ghost, a smile plastered on my face, my eyes scanning the crowd, seeking out Marcus Webb, who offered me a commiserating, almost pitying nod. Leonard, meanwhile, was in his element, holding court. His charisma a blinding shield, he spoke of his journey, his relentless pursuit of excellence, his vision. I listened, each word a jab, building to the inevitable climax. Then, He raised his glass. The room hushed. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. A trapped bird desperate to escape. To Sterling Financial, Leonard boomed, his voice resonating with false sincerity. And to all of you, my colleagues, my friends, who have witnessed my rise. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room, landing on me. A sickeningly sweet smile played on his lips. And of course, he continued, to my dear wife Cheryl. She's been an interesting part of my journey. A trophy, if you will. From my humble beginnings, a reminder of my poor phase, when expectations were simple, and ambitions, perhaps, less refined. The words, carefully chosen to be publicly palatable, yet privately devastating, hung in the air. A ripple of polite, then not so polite, laughter erupted. I felt a flush creep up my neck, my cheeks burning, the world blurring around the edges, my lungs seized, making it impossible to breathe, impossible to scream. It was as if every eye in the room had pierced through my carefully constructed facade, stripping me bare. He had done it, he had called me his poor phase trophy, right to my face, for everyone to hear. The humiliation was a physical ache, a searing burn that reached deep into my bones, yet, somehow, I held my head high. My smile remained, a rigid, unnatural thing. Asterisk. Let them laugh. Asterisk, I thought. A silent, ice-cold promise forming in the pit of my being. Asterisk. They won't be laughing for long. Asterisk. The guests eventually thinned, their parting pleasantries ringing hollow in my ears. Marcus Webb offered a quick, Cheryl, I'm truly sorry, before disappearing. Leonard, oblivious, puffed out his chest, still riding the high of his triumph. When the last car pulled away, I turned to him, my voice dangerously calm. How could you, Leonard? I asked. The words barely a whisper. He looked at me, a flicker of irritation in his eyes. Oh, for heaven's sake, Cheryl. It was a joke. Lighten up. You're being dramatic. Frankly, you're always so intense. It's no wonder I needed a bit of levity in my speech. Honestly, you almost ruined my big night with that sour face. He yawned, then stretched, clearly dismissing my pain as an inconvenience. There was no remorse, no apology, just continued blame. In that moment, the last vestiges of love, of hope, of any shared future, evaporated. All that remained was a chilling clarity, and a singular, unwavering objective. The silence of the house the next morning was far more deafening than the raucous laughter of the night before. Each tick of the grandfather clock in the hall echoed the profound emptiness in my chest, a hollow chamber where hope and affection had once resided. The lingering scent of expensive champagne and Leonard's triumphant cigar smoke clung to the air, a nauseating reminder of my public humiliation. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my body heavy with an exhaustion that went beyond sleep deprivation, an ache in my very soul. The betrayal felt like a phantom limb, perpetually throbbing, a raw wound refusing to scab over. My life, meticulously constructed around Leonard, now felt like a fragile glass sculpture that had been violently thrown against a wall, leaving behind only glittering, dangerous fragments. For hours, I simply existed, adrift in a sea of despair. The images replayed relentlessly. Leonard's smug smile, his dismissive words, the collective gasp, and then the cruel, mocking laughter. My cheeks still burned with a phantom flush. But as the sun climbed higher, casting cold light through the bedroom window, something shifted within me. The despair, heavy and suffocating, began to curdle into a colder, sharper emotion. It wasn't just anger, though that simmered beneath the surface. It was a glacial resolve, an intellectual clarity that felt almost alien after years of emotional subjugation. He thought I was a trophy? A relic? He had just sparked a fire that would consume the very world he had so confidently built. A silent, unwavering promise formed in the depths of my being. This was not an end, but a beginning, and it would be his undoing. Leonard eventually stirred, stretching languidly beside me. He hummed a tuneless melody as he headed for the bathroom, the shower soon filling the quiet house with its monotonous drone. There was no apology, no sign of remorse, no inkling of the catastrophic damage he had inflicted. He emerged later, smelling of his usual citrus-scented body wash, completely oblivious to the silent battle waging within me. He merely glanced at me, still lying motionless in bed. "Sleeping in, are we?" he quipped, a hint of his usual condescension. "Guess someone needs her beauty rest after all that socializing." He didn't wait for a response, already dressed for work, already reaching for his phone. His indifference was a fresh wound, but paradoxically, it also acted as a powerful accelerant to my burgeoning resolve. He saw me as insignificant. Good. He would never see me coming. I rose slowly, the weight of the previous night still pressing down, but now infused with a new, steel-like determination. The house was a mess. Discarded napkins, empty champagne flutes, a sticky residue on the gleaming floor I had so painstakingly polished. I walked into the kitchen, my eyes immediately drawn to the ceramic shards still scattered where my mug had fallen. Each fragment seemed to scream the truth of his words. This wasn't just tidying. This was a ritual, a silent declaration of war on the mess he had made of her life. With a detached precision, I began to clean. Each wiped surface, each collected glass, each swept shard, was a step towards reclaiming not just my home, but myself. I wasn't merely clearing the debris of a party. I was systematically dismantling the remnants of a broken marriage, piece by painstaking piece, preparing the ground for something entirely new. The sterile order of the now clean house did little to soothe the turmoil raging within me. The physical act of tidying had been a temporary anesthetic, but now, in the oppressive silence, the emotional debris felt heavier, more suffocating than ever. I wandered from room to room, the echo of Leonard's laughter and the sharp sting of his words clinging to every surface. This newfound resolve, while potent, was also a heavy cloak, and I knew, instinctively, that I couldn't bear its weight alone. There was only one person I trusted enough to witness this raw, fractured version of myself. The one who had always seen through Leonard's charm and my own quiet acquiescence. My sister, Emma. My fingers trembled as I dialed her number, the rhythmic pulse of the phone echoing the frantic beat of my heart. She answered on the third ring, her voice clear and bright, immediately asking, "Cheryl? Everything all right? You sound distant." The dam I hadn't known I was holding burst. The words tumbled out, choked by tears and punctuated by gasps for air. A fractured narrative of Leonard's callousness, the public humiliation, and his utter lack of remorse. I recounted every agonizing detail. From the shattered mug to the sneer in his voice, the mocking laughter, and the suffocating shame that had engulfed me. As I spoke, the humiliation burned anew, but so did a strange kind of catharsis. There was a silence on the other end, long and heavy, before Emma's voice returned, stripped of its usual lightness, replaced by a fierce protective edge. "That bastard," she hissed. The words laced with an anger that mirrored my own, but was far more articulate. "Cheryl, listen to me. He is a coward and a narcissist. Always has been. Always will be. This isn't about you. Not truly. This is about his pathetic need to feel superior." Emma, a successful architect who had navigated her own share of ruthless corporate politics and emerged triumphant, had an uncanny ability to distill truth from chaos. She had always been the stronger, more outspoken of us, a rock against which my quieter nature could lean. She'd battled her way up in a male-dominated field, refusing to let anyone dim her brilliance, and I suddenly remembered how many times her resilience had silently inspired me. "You have two choices now," she declared, her voice firm, cutting through my despair like a surgeon's knife. "You can wither, let him win, and spend your days regretting, or you can choose war." "War?" I whispered, the word feeling alien. yet strangely exhilarating on my tongue. Yes, war, Emma affirmed, her conviction solid. Not a petty squabble, Cheryl. A strategic campaign. You were never just the wife. You were always the smartest person in any room, even if you let him take the credit. Remember your scholarships? Your aptitude for strategic games? The way you used to organize our entire lives, meticulously, flawlessly? She began listing accomplishments I had long since buried under layers of domesticity and Leonard's inflated ego. You have a mind, Cheryl. A brilliant one. He thought he was playing a game, mocking his trophy. He just woke up a sleeping giant, and giants don't fight fair when they've been scorned. Her words were a balm, a lifeline pulling me from the depths of self-pity, igniting a flicker of the sharp analytical mind I once possessed. The idea of time strategy asterisk, of outmaneuvering him, began to form a thrilling, dangerous concept that pushed aside the urge to simply weep. The conversation that followed stretched for hours, punctuated by Emma's sharp questions and my burgeoning thoughts. We didn't formulate a concrete plan, not yet. But the seeds were sown. We discussed his vulnerabilities, his predictable patterns, the meticulous way he guarded his public image, and his insatiable ambition. We talked about my time's strengths, my intelligence, my eye for detail, my patience, qualities I had dismissed as mere domestic virtues, but which Emma insisted were lethal weapons in the right hands. The raw emotion of betrayal slowly began to crystallize into something harder, colder, more precise. I would not just react, I would orchestrate. The feeling of being adrift began to recede, replaced by the faint but unmistakable hum of purpose. I was no longer merely a scorned wife. I was a woman on the brink of becoming a strategic mastermind, and my first battleground would be the very life he had so carelessly demolished. Barely a week had passed since Leonard's triumphant, yet humiliating promotion party, and the grand pronouncements of his unstoppable ascent. The air in our home, still thick with the residue of his self-congratulatory celebration, was abruptly pierced by a different kind of sound. Leonard's enraged roar from his study. I was in the kitchen, making myself a cup of herbal tea, no longer coffee. No longer any ritual that hinted at shared domesticity, and I simply paused. A strange, cold calm settling over me. The yelling intensified, punctuated by the crashing of what sounded like a phone being slammed down. When he finally emerged, his face was a grotesque mask of fury and disbelief, starkly contrasting with the smug confidence he'd worn days earlier. "It's a disaster, Cheryl," he spat, his eyes wild, darting around the room as if searching for a hidden enemy. "The Northmont deal, it's completely fallen through. The board is furious. They're talking about strategic reassessments and accountability. After everything, a week after my promotion." His words were laced with incredulity, as if the very universe had defied its natural order by daring to impede his time's progress. He paced frantically, running a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair. "That backstabbing, conniving board? It was Marcus. I know it. He always hated me. And you and your sour face at the party, distracting me, making me look bad in front of everyone. This is your fault, Cheryl." I merely watched him, my herbal tea steaming gently in my hands. There was no surge of pity, no flicker of the old wifely concern that would have rushed to comfort him. Instead, a grim, almost intellectual satisfaction settled deep within my chest. This was not the universe being cruel. This was the universe, perhaps, finally correcting itself. It was a cruel twist of fate, or more accurately, a cosmic alignment, a precise and deliberate pushback against his unbridled arrogance. The man who had publicly branded me as a trophy from his poor phase was now staring down the barrel of a professional precipice, the very title he had so proudly paraded now teetering on the brink. His immediate deflection of blame, his predictable finger-pointing, merely reaffirmed everything Emma had said, everything I had come to know about him. He was a narcissist, incapable of self-reflection, forever seeking external scapegoats for his own failings. This wasn't a tragedy, it was a consequence that had been a long time coming. Over the next few days, Leonard wallowed in a cesspool of self-pity and impotent rage, alternately railing against his company's perceived betrayals and silently brooding. He refused to fully engage with the crisis at hand, claiming he was above the available positions for a scapegoat, convinced that Sterling Financial would soon realize their mistake and beg him to forgive them. The house, once meticulously managed by me to support his time's peace, now felt smaller, suffocating under the weight of his aggrieved presence. One afternoon he returned from Sterling, unusually quiet, and tossed a small box onto our dining table, then stomped off to drown his sorrows in expensive scotch. "Just some personal effects I needed to review," he mumbled, a vague excuse that indicated deep trouble, but not yet an exit. It was during one of my own quiet, methodical attempts to bring order to the chaos of his emotional fallout that I stumbled upon it. I was tidying the dining table, clearing away his scattered papers and empty glasses, when my gaze fell upon the box. It wasn't the usual office detritus. It contained some framed photos, a small polished stone, and a stack of business cards, likely from people he had meant to follow up with but never did. Almost idly I began to sort through them, a mundane act that momentarily distracted me from the pervasive tension. Then, my fingers brushed against a card with an elegant embossed logo, Richardson and Associates. Below it, in a sophisticated serif font, was a name that made my heart give a sudden, sharp lurch: Donna Richardson, CEO. Donna. The name resonated with echoes of a past life, a time before Leonard, before I had meticulously shrunk myself to fit into his shadow. Donna Richardson had been a year ahead of me in college, a dynamo even then, brimming with intelligence and an unapologetic ambition that I had both admired and secretly envied. We had shared a few classes, collaborated on a couple of projects, and I remembered her sharp wit and her uncanny ability to dissect complex problems with surgical precision. She had always been destined for greatness, even back then, while I, at the time, had been more focused on the romantic ideals of building a life with Leonard. I'd seen snippets of her success over the years, articles in business journals, mentions in alumni newsletters, but we had lost touch, as so often happens when lives diverge. Now, her name, printed boldly on a crisp white card, felt like a beacon in the encroaching darkness. It wasn't just a name. It was a memory, a spark of possibility igniting in the ashes of my ruined domesticity. Donna, the woman who had conquered a world Leonard only aspired to rule. A sudden, audacious thought blossomed in my mind, thrilling and terrifying in equal measure. Leonard's professional turmoil, my newfound resolve, Emma's words echoing, "Choose war." Was this merely coincidence? Or was this the very first piece, strategically placed, in the grand campaign I was now determined to wage? The business card, a seemingly random relic from a discarded box, felt less like a chance discovery and more like a fateful invitation. Holding Donna's card, a surge of adrenaline, cold and sharp, coursed through me. It was a potent antidote to the emotional stagnation that had threatened to consume me. Taking a deep breath, I retrieved my phone and, with a hand that still trembled slightly but now with anticipation rather than despair, I dialed the number. The ring seemed to stretch into an eternity, each pulse a drumbeat against my newfound resolve. When Donna's voice, warm and familiar, answered, a gasp escaped my lips. "Cheryl? Is that really you?" she exclaimed, genuine surprise and pleasure evident in her tone. The words, though less choked than my conversation with Emma, still poured out, a torrent of raw emotion recounting Leonard's public betrayal, his unvarnished arrogance, and the recent, sudden collapse of his career at Sterling Financial. Donna listened, a silence of understanding punctuating my fragmented sentences. "Oh, Cheryl," she finally said, her voice soft but firm, "I always knew he was a snake. A charming one perhaps, but a snake nonetheless. I saw it even back in college. The way he subtly undermined you, even as he claimed to adore you. It's why I kept my distance, even when I saw him at industry events. always trying to climb over others. She paused, a shared history of subtle misogyny and corporate machinations binding us. I know what it's like to be underestimated, to be dismissed as just a pretty face, or just the wife. My own journey, establishing Richardson and Associates, was paved with those battles, and to be frank, Cheryl, I've been keeping an eye on Sterling for a while. Leonard's recent promotion, while outwardly a triumph, signaled a deeper instability, and his own hubris made him a prime target. I already knew he was about to fall. The question was simply how to best capitalize on it. Her immediate offer, devoid of judgment, resonated deeply. She didn't pity me. She saw a fellow warrior and a shared opportunity. Then came the astonishing proposal. Cheryl, she began, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I have an idea, a rather audacious one, that could turn this entire situation to your advantage. I need to hire a new senior consultant, someone with a certain profile, someone ambitious, easily manipulated, and perhaps a little too confident in his own charm. Leonard, having just been pushed out of Sterling, is now vulnerable, desperate for a quick rebound. We can offer him a position at Richardson and Associates. He won't question it. He'll see it as a convenient stepping stone, a place to regain his footing without appearing to fall too far. He'll be so grateful for the opportunity that he'll walk right into our trap, completely unaware that this isn't a rescue, but the next meticulously planned phase of his downfall. The audacity of it was breathtaking, a brilliant, brutal stroke of genius. But Donna wasn't finished, and while he's busy trying to impress me and, no doubt, any attractive young colleague *U times will prepare for your own return. We'll work together. I'll mentor you, guide you. You'll join Richardson and Associates as a strategic advisor, directly overseeing his department. Or perhaps, even him. The implications of her plan hit me like a physical force, scattering the last vestiges of my despair. My mind, dormant for so long beneath layers of domesticity and Leonard's condescending narratives, flickered to life. But how? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Not out of doubt, but out of the sheer magnitude and precision of the vision. How would I even begin to compete at that level? Donna chuckled, a sound full of steel and conviction. Cheryl, you were always the sharpest. You just chose to channel that brilliance into supporting him. Now, you'll channel it into yourself. We'll start with a deep dive into corporate strategy, market analysis, leadership development. I'll give you access to all our resources. You'll research Leonard's habits, his vulnerabilities, his professional relationships. We'll build a profile so comprehensive, he won't know what hit him. This isn't just about revenge, Cheryl. This is about reclaiming your intelligence, your career, your time self-*, and for that, we need to be meticulous, precise, and utterly ruthless. This is how we orchestrate his true time's downfall. Her words were a clarion call, waking an intellectual hunger I hadn't realized I possessed. Suddenly, the endless hours I had spent planning parties, managing budgets, and silently observing Leonard's corporate maneuvering transformed into valuable data, grist for the mill of my burgeoning strategy. My strategic mind, long relegated to household logistics, buzzed with new purpose. I devoured books on business acumen, financial markets, and competitive intelligence. I spent hours poring over articles, case studies, and corporate reports, learning the language of the boardroom, understanding the intricate dance of power and influence. I realized that my years of listening to Leonard's work calls, attending his industry dinners, and even enduring his condescending explanations of business basics had, inadvertently, provided me with a wealth of insider knowledge. I was no longer merely learning. I was remembering, connecting, and constructing. The moral ambiguity of manipulating Leonard's future was overshadowed by the fierce conviction that he had forfeited any right to fair play the moment he called me his poor phase trophy. This wasn't about tearing him down unjustly. It was about ensuring he reaped what he had sown, guided by our deliberate hand. The alliance forged between Donna and me became the bedrock of my transformation. Our phone calls turned into intensive strategy sessions. Sometimes late into the night, Donna was an unwavering mentor, challenging my assumptions, pushing me to think bigger, sharper. She recounted her own battles, the subtle slights, the overt dismissals she had overcome, fostering a fierce camaraderie between us. We mapped out every step, every potential pitfall, every contingency. Our discussions delved into the minutiae of corporate politics, the psychology of power, and the art of subtle manipulation. We were two intelligent, determined women, united by a singular purpose, not just to execute a meticulously crafted plan, but to redefine what it meant to be powerful in a world that had tried to silence us. With every shared insight, with every calculated move, the hum of purpose within me grew stronger, clearer. The game was on, and I was finally ready to play, not merely reacting to his fall, but actively designing his ultimate unraveling. Leonard, still reeling from his abrupt dismissal from Sterling Financial, surprisingly embraced Donna's unexpected job offer, with a predictable blend of relief and self-aggrandizement. Through Donna, I learned he'd presented himself during the interview process with his usual polished veneer, charming the HR department and middle management with grandiose tales of past achievements and a carefully curated narrative of Sterling's misguided restructuring. He saw the position at Richardson & Associates, a mid-level consultancy role, not as a step down, but as a temporary platform, a chance to regroup and re-strategize, before inevitably launching himself back into the C-suite. His ego, ever fragile yet eternally inflated, absorbed the perceived compliment of being headhunted by a prestigious firm, without a single flicker of suspicion. He never once questioned why an opportunity of this nature had landed in his lap so conveniently, or why Donna Richardson herself, a CEO, had seemed so personally invested in his recruitment. He simply accepted it as his due, another testament to his undeniable, if currently undervalued, brilliance. From my quiet vantage point, now less a home and more a strategic command center, Donna and I observed his integration into Richardson & Associates. Donna provided me with discreet updates, often punctuated by her dry wit. His initial days were marked by a flurry of performative enthusiasm. He'd arrive early, leave late, and fill his calendar with networking lunches, a familiar pattern that once fooled me into believing he was a dedicated worker. Now, through the cold lens of calculated observation, I saw the cracks. His work ethic was superficial, focused more on appearances than substance. He delegated aggressively, often claiming credit for minor contributions from his team, and spent an inordinate amount of time in meetings, where his talent for eloquent, if hollow, presentations shone. He's already trying to charm the junior analysts, Donna reported one afternoon, a hint of amusement in her voice. Making grand promises, hinting at exclusive opportunities if they play their cards right. I wasn't surprised. Leonard thrived on being the center of attention, cultivating a loyal following, especially among those he perceived as less powerful or easily influenced. It was a familiar playbook, one I had helped him write for years. The ease with which he fell back into these established habits was both a confirmation of his unwavering character and a chilling testament to the depth of his predictability. He was a creature of comfort, and his comforts included a sense of unearned superiority and the adulation of others. Then, Sarah Chin entered the narrative. Donna mentioned her casually at first. A bright, ambitious young project manager, just a few years out of business school, assigned to Leonard's team. She's sharp, Donna commented, and clearly has a promising future here. Very professional, focused. It took less than a week for Leonard to fixate. His conversations with Donna shifted, subtly at first, to include more mentions of Sarah's exceptional contributions or her innovative ideas. Soon, his lunchtime networking ventures mysteriously began to coincide with Sarah's. I saw the shift not through physical observation, but through Donna's reports, and more tellingly, through Leonard's own casual remarks at home. He would mention Sarah's name with an almost imperceptible lengthening of the vowel. A slight softening of his tone, precisely the way he used to speak of any new, attractive female colleague who had piqued his interest. "He's invited her to an informal brainstorming session after hours," Donna reported, her voice flat. "Just the two of them, in his office. I've made sure HR is aware of the situation. Discreetly, of course, noting a potential mentor-mentee dynamic that needs careful oversight." My stomach didn't churn with jealousy, nor did my heart ache with renewed betrayal. Instead, there was a quiet, almost serene satisfaction. He was precisely where we wanted him to be, behaving precisely how we expected him to behave. Sarah Chin, bright and professional, was unwittingly becoming a pawn in a game she didn't even know was being played. Leonard, in his arrogance, thought he was the player. He couldn't see the board, much less the hands that had carefully placed him on it. I pictured Sarah, young and eager, likely flattered by the attention of a senior consultant, mistaking Leonard's predatory charm for genuine mentorship or professional interest. It was a scenario I knew intimately, a trap I had fallen into myself years ago, but now, seeing it unfold from a distance, armed with the cold clarity of hindsight and Emma's stark advice, I felt nothing but a quiet resolve. This wasn't just about making him pay. It was about exposing his patterns, his inherent weakness, his inability to evolve beyond the superficial. His predictable pursuit of Sarah Chin wasn't merely a sign of his unchanging nature. It was a critical vulnerability, a precisely placed target that would soon become central to my final move. The pieces were falling into place, each of Leonard's calculated missteps a testament to the soundness of our strategic foresight. The game was indeed on, and Leonard, unknowingly, was dancing directly into the crosshairs. As the initial weeks of Leonard's employment at Richardson and Associates stretched into months, his oblivious dance, certain of his unearned charisma, continued unabated. With each passing day, our strategic efforts intensified, pivoting from mere observation to a meticulous dissection of his professional world. Donna, through her extensive network and subtle inquiries, continued to feed me a steady stream of intelligence. We didn't just want to know times what times Leonard did. We wanted to understand times why times and times how times he did it, exposing the fragile scaffolding beneath his polished facade. His work habits, as Donna's reports confirmed, remained a study in performative productivity. He excelled at claiming ownership of others' ideas, skillfully navigating meetings with verbose, yet ultimately superficial, contributions, and consistently outsourcing the heavy lifting to his subordinates. We compiled dossiers on his key professional relationships: who he charmed, who he intimidated, who he truly respected, a very short list, and who he saw as a stepping stone. His most glaring vulnerability, beyond his inflated ego, was his absolute aversion to detailed work, and his tendency to panic under genuine pressure when his usual bluster failed. Simultaneously, my personal transformation accelerated, driven by an urgency that was both thrilling and daunting. The analytical framework Donna had provided, coupled with Emma's unwavering belief in my intellect, became my daily fuel. I immersed myself in online courses on advanced corporate finance and digital marketing strategies, devoured books on executive leadership, and subscribed to industry journals that once felt entirely beyond my purview. Donna, true to her word, became an invaluable mentor, not just in business acumen but in the subtle art of projecting authority. We spent hours in video calls, dissecting market trends, rehearsing potential dialogues, and even critiquing my evolving wardrobe choices. "Every detail, Cheryl," she'd emphasize, "speaks volumes before you even open your mouth. You need to command the room with your presence, not just your words." My physical preparation was equally rigorous. I joined a high-end gym, not for vanity, but for discipline and resilience. The early morning runs, the intense circuit training, the controlled breathing exercises, each was a form of meditation, sharpening my focus and fortifying my resolve. My diet became a precisely calculated regimen, designed to maximize energy and mental clarity. I shed the soft edges of my past self, not just physically, But psychologically, there were moments, late at night, when the enormity of what I was undertaking would wash over me, a chilling doubt whispering whether I truly possessed the ruthlessness required. Asterisk. What if I fail? What if he sees through it? Asterisk. But then Emma's voice would echo, choose war, or Donna's calm assurance. You're smarter than him, Cheryl. Always have been. I would push back against the fear, remind myself of Leonard's casual cruelty, and let the righteous anger harden into determination. To prepare for my imminent role, Donna and I ran through countless simulations. We practiced presentations for various stakeholders, imaginary board members, skeptical investors. Even a mock Leonard played with unnerving accuracy by Donna. She challenged me with impossible questions, tried to undermine my arguments, and forced me to maintain an unshakable composure. I learned to anticipate objections, craft concise rebuttals, and deliver complex information with compelling clarity. Every word, every gesture, every nuance of my professional persona was meticulously refined. I knew I couldn't just times be times good. I had to be undeniably, overwhelmingly brilliant to silence any lingering whispers of Leonard's wife. The final pieces of our strategy were now being laid. The ultimate reveal meticulously timed. The tension in the quiet house became almost palpable. A silent hum beneath the surface of my controlled demeanor. Leonard continued his clueless existence, increasingly preoccupied with Sarah Chin, oblivious to the finely woven web tightening around him. He saw me as a quiet, domestic fixture, a non-entity. He never noticed the late-night glow from my study, the new books on my shelves, the subtle shift in my posture, or the unwavering fire in my eyes. It was the calm before the storm, a strategic pause where every element was perfected, every potential variable considered. The waiting was the hardest part, a testament to my newfound patience, but I knew, with absolute certainty, that the storm was coming, and I would be the one controlling its every devastating current. The morning dawned crisp and clear, a stark contrast to the turbulent weeks that had preceded it. Today was the day. Today, the storm broke. A sleek, obsidian Rolls-Royce Ghost purred to a halt at the curb of Richardson and Associates, its polished surface reflecting the burgeoning cityscape. The driver, a discreet man in a dark uniform, opened the rear door for me. I stepped out, my posture honed, my custom-tailored power suit, a muted charcoal, impeccably cut, a second skin, my hair, styled into a sharp, sophisticated bob, framed a face that was calm, composed, and utterly devoid of the former Mrs. Leonard. This wasn't merely an entrance, it was a statement. The metallic gleam of the company's plaque, Richardson and Associates, seemed to almost hum in anticipation. I took a deep breath, the scent of expensive leather and urban exhaust filling my lungs, and walked towards the gleaming glass doors. The lobby was a hive of activity, but my gaze cut through the throng, locking onto a familiar figure by the reception desk. Leonard. He was engaged in what appeared to be a rather animated, self-important conversation with a junior colleague, likely regaling them with another exaggerated tale of his corporate prowess. His back was to me. I walked past the gleaming marble pillars, the soft click of my heels echoing subtly, until I was just a few feet behind him. Leonard. My voice was a low, steady note, carrying just enough authority to cut through his monologue without being overtly loud. He stiffened, then slowly turned. His eyes, usually so quick to assess and dismiss, widened incrementally. The self-assured smile faded, replaced by a look of utter, profound bewilderment, as if he'd just seen a ghost. Or perhaps, a particularly expensive mirage. His jaw slackened, then snapped shut. Cheryl? What? What are you doing here? He stammered, his voice losing its usual resonance, shrinking to a confused squeak. The junior colleague beside him, sensing the sudden shift in atmosphere, quickly averted their gaze, suddenly engrossed in their phone. Before Leonard could string together another coherent thought, the elevator doors chimed open, and Donna Richardson stepped out, her presence commanding immediate attention. She was impeccably dressed, a vision of polished authority. Her eyes met mine, a quick, knowing flicker passing between us. A silent acknowledgement of the play unfolding. "Leonard, just the man I was looking for," Donna said, her tone professional, yet with a subtle undercurrent that only I could detect. She moved towards me, a hand gently resting on my arm. "I see you've already met my new senior strategic consultant, Cheryl Hayes." She emphasized senior strategic consultant and Hayes, my maiden name, which I had quietly reinstated for my professional identity, making the announcement resonate through the hushed lobby. Leonard's eyes darted from Donna to me, then back again, his mind visibly struggling to process the information. "Senior? Strategic? Cheryl?" he repeated, the words stumbling over each other. "But she's my wife." The implication, hanging unspoken, was times she's my wife. She couldn't possibly be here in a professional capacity, much less one that outranks me. Asterisk. A faint, almost imperceptible murmur rippled through the immediate vicinity. Several employees who had previously worked with Leonard at Sterling, and now found themselves at Richardson and Associates, exchanged quick glances. Their expressions ranged from discreet curiosity to thinly veiled shock. Some faces I noted held a touch of recognition, a memory of the quiet wife at Leonard's corporate events. "Indeed, Leonard," Donna replied smoothly, her smile unwavering. "Cheryl and I go way back. She's been working with me on a confidential, high-level project for months, and now she's officially joining us. I believe she'll be an invaluable asset. In fact, she'll be overseeing the strategic growth initiatives, a division that will, in part, include your team's contributions." The implication of my authority, the subtle shift in power dynamics, was delivered with surgical precision. My gaze, cool and steady, met Leonard's once more. The confusion in his eyes was slowly giving way to something colder, something akin to dawning horror. He looked utterly stripped, his usual confident bravado dissolving before my very eyes. His public humiliation at the party was now being reciprocated. Precisely, professionally, and in a setting where his reputation truly mattered. Just then, two of Richardson and Associates' senior partners, Mr. Henderson and Miss Albright, emerged from an adjacent meeting room, their conversation abruptly halting as they noticed Donna and the new arrival. They had been present at Leonard's promotion party months ago, having crossed paths with him at various industry functions. "Donna, good morning," Mr. Henderson greeted. Then his eyes landed on me. His polite smile faltered for a fraction of a second. A fleeting moment of surprise. "Cheryl? Is that really you?" he asked, a touch of genuine curiosity and respect now mingling with his surprise. Miss Albright, a sharp-eyed woman who rarely missed a beat, offered a knowing half-smile. "Cheryl, it's wonderful to see you here. I always knew you had a sharp mind." Even if Leonard was always so quick to dominate the conversation, their words, their subtle shift in demeanor, spoke volumes. I wasn't just Leonard's wife anymore. I was Cheryl Hayes, senior strategic consultant, arriving in a Rolls-Royce, introduced by the CEO herself, and immediately commanding the respect of seasoned industry veterans. Leonard, meanwhile, stood rooted to the spot, a silent, increasingly pale figure, watching his carefully constructed world begin to unravel right before his eyes. The game had truly begun, and the first move was mine. My initial introduction in the lobby had been a mere appetizer. The true game, the decisive confrontation, awaited us that afternoon in the executive boardroom. As the clock edged towards the quarterly meeting, a palpable tension hummed through Richardson and Associates. This wasn't just another corporate review. It was a stage set for a very specific, very public unmasking. I walked into the boardroom alongside Donna, her hand resting lightly on my back in a gesture of subtle support and shared power. The room, typically intimidating with its long mahogany table, plush leather chairs, an array of glowing screens displaying complex financial data, felt different to me now. It was a crucible, yes, but one I was ready to command. Key executives, including Mr. Henderson and Miss Albright from our earlier encounter, were already seated. Their murmurs ceasing as we entered. Leonard was there too, rigid in his chair. His face a carefully constructed mask of professional indifference that didn't quite conceal the lingering shock in his eyes. He avoided my gaze, preferring to stare at the polished table surface, a telltale sign of his unease. Sarah Chin sat a few seats down from him, a picture of bright-eyed ambition, dutifully taking notes. Donna opened the meeting with her usual composed efficiency, quickly running through the agenda. When it was time for the strategic growth update, she turned to me with a calm, inviting smile. Now, I'd like to introduce Cheryl Hayes, our senior strategic consultant, who has been instrumental in developing some truly innovative market strategies for our next quarter. Cheryl, if you please. I rose, my movements fluid and confident, a stark contrast to the trembling woman who had listened to Leonard's cruel speech just weeks ago. My presentation was meticulously crafted, distilled from weeks of relentless research and intensive coaching from Donna. I navigated through complex market analytics, identified burgeoning consumer trends, and outlined aggressive, yet achievable, expansion opportunities. I spoke of data-driven insights, projected growth curves, and the crucial need for adaptive innovation in a volatile landscape. My voice, clear and resonant, filled the room, conveying a mastery of the subject that left no room for doubt. I saw heads nod, pens scribble across notepads, and occasionally, a flicker of genuine admiration in the eyes of the senior partners. I was not merely reciting facts, I was weaving a compelling narrative of future success, demonstrating not just knowledge, but profound strategic foresight. Out of the corner of my eye, I tracked Leonard. His initial mask of indifference had begun to crack. First, a subtle frown as I referenced a nuanced economic indicator he clearly hadn't considered. Then, a quick, almost imperceptible shake of his head when I presented a counterintuitive market entry strategy that contradicted his own previously stated opinions in company-wide emails. As I delved deeper into the intricacies of competitive intelligence and brand positioning, his face grew paler. The confident bluster he usually employed to mask his lack of true depth was useless against the undeniable precision of my analysis. He shifted in his seat. His gaze flickered around the room, desperately seeking an ally, a flaw, anything to diminish the undeniable authority radiating from me. I saw the dawning, painful realization blooming in his eyes. The understanding that I wasn't just present times in this room, but that I truly belonged times here, on a level he could barely comprehend, let alone match. The trap was closing, and he was beginning to feel its cold, metallic grip. As I concluded, the room erupted in a respectful but enthusiastic round of applause. My gaze swept over the faces, lingering for a fraction of a second on Leonard, whose usual smugness had been replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated dread. I returned to my seat, a quiet sense of triumph settling over me. Donna stood up again, her smile widening slightly as she addressed the room. Thank you, Cheryl. That was truly exceptional, and perfectly outlines the direction we intend to take. Which brings me to our final announcement for this meeting. The shift in her tone, though subtle, signaled a moment of profound significance. Leonard visibly flinched. Sarah Chin, unaware of the impending shift in her own professional landscape, continued to take notes. Her brow furrowed in concentration. Effective immediately, Donna continued, her voice clear and authoritative. Cheryl Hayes will be joining Richardson & Associates in the full-time capacity of special advisor to the CEO, overseeing all strategic initiatives within the corporate development division. She paused, letting the words sink in. The room buzzed with quiet murmurs, a ripple of surprised congratulations. Then, Donna turned, her eyes locking on to Leonard. This new role will give Cheryl direct oversight of several key projects, including those currently managed by Leonard's team. Specifically, she will be working very closely with, and providing direct guidance to, Miss Sarah Chin, on the upcoming Project Phoenix initiative. The air in the boardroom seemed to thicken. Leonard's head snapped up, his eyes bulging. His jaw dropped, a strangled sound catching in his throat. Sarah Chin, finally looking up from her notepad, registered the words. Then her gaze flickered between Donna, me, and a suddenly ashen Leonard. Her eyes, moments ago bright with ambition, clouded with dawning comprehension. The color drained from Leonard's face completely, leaving him ghostly pale. He had called me a trophy from his poor phase, dismissed my intelligence, and pursued a younger colleague with casual disdain. Now, I was not only his superior, but I held direct authority over the very person he had sought to charm and manipulate. His public humiliation, months in the making, was now absolute, meticulously executed, and utterly undeniable. The laughter he had evoked at his party was nothing compared to the deafening silence of his own shattered pride. The gasp that escaped him was not of surprise, but of a soul-deep recognition of his own catastrophic downfall. His eyes, fixed on me, were no longer clouded with confusion or even dread, but with a raw, visceral understanding of the intricate web I had woven. The color that had drained from his face earlier now seemed to have left him permanently. He was a pallid, trembling figure, stripped bare before the very people whose admiration he so desperately craved. The silence in the room, once filled with the respectful applause for my presentation, now vibrated with the unspoken judgment of his peers and superiors. He stammered, attempting to form words, perhaps an objection, a denial, but only a pathetic croak emerged, swallowed by the sheer weight of his shattered pride. This was not just a professional setback. It was an ego death, played out in the most public and humiliating arena imaginable, orchestrated by the woman he had dismissed as a mere trophy. Sarah Chin, meanwhile, watched him with a dawning horror that slowly morphed into stark disillusionment. Her bright, ambitious eyes, initially reflecting Leonard's shock, narrowed as she processed Donna's final words. Direct oversight of Leonard's team, providing direct guidance to Miss Sarah Chin. The implication was clear. Leonard, her supposed mentor, the charming senior consultant whose attention had seemed so flattering, was now subject to my authority, and by extension, his attempts to cultivate a relationship with her were exposed as nothing more than a manipulative power play. I saw the pieces click into place for her. The whispered rumors, the subtle office politics, and now, the undeniable truth of his character laid bare. She shifted in her seat, a subtle but decisive movement. Her professional distance from him immediately palpable, her expression hardened. A silent contract forming between her and her ambition, a promise that she would not allow herself to be entangled in his petty machinations. She was intelligent enough to recognize a sinking ship, and wise enough to jump clear. For me, the triumph was not a roaring fire but a quiet, intensely satisfying warmth that spread through my chest. It wasn't the petty glee of a vengeful woman, but the profound contentment of an architect who had meticulously brought a complex, intricate design to life. This wasn't just revenge, it was a strategic masterpiece, a reclamation of my intellect, my worth, and my very identity. The years of quiet sacrifice, the public humiliation, the patronizing dismissal of my capabilities, all of it had been transmuted into this singular moment of undeniable power. I had not merely survived, I had transcended. The scorned wife had indeed become a strategic mastermind, and the sense of profound satisfaction was the most intoxicating feeling I had ever known. The meeting concluded shortly after. The remaining agenda items dispatched with a brisk efficiency that contrasted sharply with Leonard's shattered composure. As the executives rose, offering me genuine congratulations and firm handshakes, the new dynamic was unequivocally established. I moved through the room with a confidence that felt utterly natural, engaging in brief, insightful conversations about market projections and corporate vision. I was no longer an outsider, no longer a temporary consultant. I was an integral, powerful force within Richardson and Associates. Leonard, on the other hand, made a quick, almost panicked exit, avoiding all eye contact, his face still a mask of profound shame. Sarah Chin offered me a polite, if slightly nervous, nod before collecting her things and leaving with a resolute stride, already charting a new, safer professional course for herself, far from Leonard's toxic influence. The game was won, not with an explosive confrontation, but with the quiet, devastating precision of a carefully laid trap, leaving behind a new order, a new power, and a woman who had finally, truly, found her own formidable voice. After that definitive public declaration, Leonard's presence in my life transformed from a source of anguish into a pathetic, desperate pantomime. He bombarded me with frantic phone calls, texts oscillating between petulant accusations and saccharine apologies, and even appeared unannounced at my new apartment, demanding an audience. He tried to reclaim control through bluster, accusing me of colluding with Donna, threatening legal action, and attempting to rewrite history to cast himself as the wronged party. When that failed, he shifted to manipulative tenderness, leaving wilting bouquets and sending emotionally charged messages about our beautiful past and what we had lost. Each desperate overture, each pathetic attempt to rekindle the old dynamic, was met with my unwavering, chilling indifference. His words, once capable of piercing my soul, now fell flat, like pebbles against a fortified wall. There was no crack in my resolve, and no flicker of the old Cheryl who would have wavered. His frantic efforts to drag me back into his orbit only served to highlight the depth of his desperation and the absolute finality of my departure from his influence. My world, however, was rapidly expanding, teeming with purpose and unprecedented autonomy. My role as special advisor quickly solidified, a demanding yet exhilarating position that leveraged every facet of my rekindled intellect. I moved into a sleek modern apartment overlooking the city, its panoramic views a tangible, breathtaking symbol of my new, unencumbered life. The first few paychecks, substantial and earned purely by my own intellect and effort, felt like more than mere money. They were tokens of freedom, of a profound financial and professional autonomy I hadn't realized I craved so deeply. I no longer had to ask permission, no longer felt the need to justify my expenses or dilute my ambitions. My calendar was filled with high-level meetings, strategic planning sessions, and mentoring opportunities, particularly with Sarah Chin, who proved to be an incredibly insightful and resilient individual, eager to learn and grow under genuine guidance. The constant, low hum of anxiety that had defined my life with Leonard was replaced by the exhilarating thrum of purpose and self-direction. I was no longer defined by my relationship to him. I was defined by my capabilities, my contributions, and my own flourishing identity. The question of the marriage itself lingered, a loose thread in the tapestry of my new life. Many, including Emma, expected me to file for divorce, to sever all ties unequivocally, and the thought had certainly crossed my mind, especially in the raw, painful days of betrayal. But as my power grew, my perspective shifted. I realized that destroying Leonard entirely, while perhaps cathartic in the moment, was not my ultimate goal. My true aim was reclamation, not obliteration. I didn't want to burn down the house. I wanted to rebuild it on my own terms, or perhaps, simply claim my rightful share and walk away. I chose a different path. To restructure the marriage, not based on love or even residual affection, but on absolute equality and mutual, if grudging, respect. He would remain my husband legally, for now. But the terms of our engagement were entirely new. He would live in the house, but my apartment was my inviolable sanctuary. Our finances would be clearly delineated, our lives largely separate. It was a conscious choice, a strategic move designed to deny him the narrative of the scorned woman who had collapsed without him, and instead, force him to live with the constant, searing reminder of the woman he had so casually underestimated. Now his formidable equal, if not his superior, in every tangible way. This was the ultimate victory, not just the professional triumph or the financial independence, but the profound inner peace that settled within me, a quiet, unshakable contentment. The rage that had once consumed me had cooled into a focused, potent energy, the despair transmuted into an unwavering self-belief. I looked in the mirror and no longer saw the quiet, accommodating wife, but a woman with sharp eyes, a confident posture, and a quiet strength that resonated from deep within. I was free from the indignities of the past, not by erasing them, but by having definitively conquered and transcended them. The trophy from his poor phase had shattered her glass casing, discovered her own intrinsic value, and become the master of her own destiny. The journey had been arduous, marked by pain and profound uncertainty, but standing on the other side, I realized it had been absolutely necessary. It had forged me into the woman I was always meant to be, independent, powerful, and utterly, gloriously whole. Looking back now, from the vantage point of my newfound autonomy, the sheer distance I had traveled felt almost surreal. The quiet, self-effacing woman who had once defined herself solely by her husband's reflection was gone, replaced by a strategic mastermind forged in the fires of betrayal. The journey from scorned victim to victorious architect of my own destiny had been arduous, yet every step had reaffirmed a profound truth: the enduring power of intellect, meticulous planning, and an unwavering belief in myself. My new identity wasn't just a professional title. It was a state of being, confident, independent, and utterly in control of my life's narrative. Richardson and Associates thrived under the strategic initiatives I now spearheaded, and I found genuine satisfaction in mentoring bright talents like Sarah Chin, guiding them to navigate pitfalls I had once blindly stumbled into. Leonard remained a fleeting shadow in the periphery of my professional world, his eyes still holding a pathetic blend of resentment and fear whenever our paths inevitably crossed. But his gaze no longer held power. It merely reflected his own diminished reality. I was no longer seeking his approval, nor defined by his disdain. The future stretched before me, a canvas of endless possibilities, painted not by external expectations, but by my own strength, wisdom, and the undeniable knowledge that I, Cheryl Hayes, was the undisputed author of my own remarkable story.